to talk about something you're just going to love. You're just going to be like, yay, Gaye, thank you so much. But anyway, it's called, tonight we're going to talk on the power of the breaking. The power of the breaking. Breaking doesn't seem powerful, but the breaking is where the power is. And I can pretty much tell you that every one of us in here have places that need to be broken, that God needs to break in us in order to take us to the next place. And, I was thinking about this because breaking produces fruit. But until there is a breaking, you will never get the fruit. And so I started thinking about my life. So I was raised in North Carolina, and my parents decided to move us out to the country. Woohoo! Loved it. Not near anything. I was like, huh? And we had 2 gardens. And so I remember the day that my dad came to me and he said, look, I'm learning about all this gardening stuff, but the one thing I know is that we're going to have to till the ground. And he said, so I want everybody to take a turn. So it's this huge machine called a rototiller. Now, massive, outweighed me by it was huge. And you take it and you have to go in a row and you have to it's got massive blades on it, and it completely digs up the ground. And so my 2 brothers started, and then it was my turn. And so I'm out there and I'm going to town and I'm dying. This machine's got me going everywhere. It's but I'm determined I'm going to do it. And then I remember looking around and there was nobody else there, and I thought, okay, now I'm left to myself here. And I remember there was one whole section over here that still had not been tilled yet, but it looked like it had been dug up just a little bit. Because at first, before you till, you kind of go in and by hand dig it up a little bit. So I decided, no one's going to know. My dad won't know if I don't till that little section right there. And so I tilled everything else, and everything's great. And then I remember it came time for us to kind of rake it, and then it came time to plant. And we started planting. My dad was like, this is awesome, look at our garden. And I remember when he was like, but what has taken place over here? Because the only thing over there were weeds and nothing else. And it's because I skipped the breaking and chose to leave it. And therefore nothing was growing except for weeds. And I started thinking about that with God. As much as we don't want Him breaking anything in us, if we skip that part, God can't do what He wants to do. And it wasn't fun. You're out there tilling, and you're tilling manure. And I'm the nose of the South. I'm smelling all this cow manure. Why manure is so good for the ground, I don't know. God's got a sense of humor. But my dad would get these dump trucks full of manure and dump them. I remember one day when he dumped it, there was like a dead chicken in the middle of the manure. And what is my point in that? It can be stinky when you go to the breaking. But what we got out of the breaking in the part that I didn't skip was incredible. Like the amount of fruit and vegetables that came from that breaking was amazing. And so I'm learning that God is saying to me, you need to understand that I want to do something in you in this breaking, but it's going to not necessarily be easy. And I want you to understand this statement the whole time that we're talking today. Don't ever forget that to be whole means to be broken, and to be broken means to become whole. To be whole means to be broken, and to be broken means to become whole. God wants us whole, but because you and I have come up with so many wonderful habits, behaviors, and things that we do, I believe that God realizes there needs to be a breaking in us, and things that truthfully need to change. And I do want to say this, as you already know this, but anytime God's doing something in us, if all we know how to do is process it in our head and not in our heart, then we're going to be miserable, because it's very hard to understand what God's doing. And if all you can do is think about it, because how many of you know when you get into your head and you start processing, you don't understand it because it doesn't make sense to you. But if we can start understanding that when God is breaking us, if we'll look at it through a heart place and say, God, I either trust you or I don't understand it, but I'm going to trust you. I was thinking about this. There's a statement that you've heard, maybe none of you youngins over here, but some of us I've only got a few mature ones in here, but a couple mature ones, that it used to always say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I believe that if it ain't broke, God can't use it. And it doesn't seem to make sense to us. Why would God want me to be broke so that he can? Because there's so much in you and I that if it does not get broken, we cannot look like Jesus because we've got us in the way. Your flesh is in the way. And so I believe that if God's going to use it, he's going to need to break it. So I want to go through a couple things that I think, because I know what you're saying to me. You're probably going, okay, so I'm so confused. Like, what needs to be broke? Or what do you mean by this? So every time you're hurt, how many of you have ever been hurt by someone? Awesome. Yes, 100%. Probably today. I don't mean it wrong. Who knows? But whenever you're hurt, God's breaking your ability to hold on to pain and bitterness. You wouldn't know what it was like to not hold a grudge against somebody if you'd never been hurt. But if you are one that holds on and holds the grudge and doesn't let it go and doesn't forgive, then God needs to break that in you. And the only way to break that in you is to bring someone along that actually does that to you. And then you start to see this breaking in you to go, God, I don't want to live like this and carry this hurt. You know, every time you're cursed, yelled at, or rejected, he's breaking your need for approval. And I believe one of the hardest things, especially for women, is the need for approval. And I want to give you an example of this. I always, just so if you're new, I hang out my dirty laundry because it dries faster. So you just know, I'm going to let you know my stuff. But I remember the day I had been reading a book on marriage, and I've been reading, it was about how to honor and respect your husband, and I was like so fired up. And I did not have a lot of friends growing up, but I had met a couple friends when we moved here. And I remember our kids were young, and you know when your kids are young, you don't get out to do a lot, but I just told him, I said, is there any way I could go and meet with these two friends, because I'm just like so excited about what God's showing me, how to respect you and how to love you and honor you. I want to share it with them. And he's like, no, I'll take care of the kids. And so I remember going to this dinner, and some of you have heard this story before, but I remember going to the dinner, and we sat down, and I'm just like, I can't wait to share, because you know when you read something or you get something, you want to, you know, like you go find that beautiful shirt and you want to go tell everybody it's on sale at Target, you got to get there. So you want to say it, you want to share it, right? So I couldn't wait to share it. And so we sat down, and before I got to say anything, the first lady sits and she goes, well, you have no idea. I'm just so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be out of my house. I'm so glad to be away from my obnoxious children. And she goes, and I'm so glad that finally my husband finally gets it. And he understands that if he goes out and plays golf and comes home, don't even think, buddy, about sitting on the couch. It's now your time to start doing the laundry. It's now your time to start getting it together. And she's going through this whole big thing, and he just thinks he's this. And I'm sitting there going, well, this is going well. And then the next one goes, oh, let me tell you, you're not kidding. She's like, I am so over my husband. Every time she goes, if I pick up his underwear one more time, I'm literally going to take it around his neck and strangle him with it. And they're going on, and I'm sitting here, and I'm going, and now I'm going to share about my beautiful knowledge and what God showed me about how to honor my husband and to respect him and be grateful for him and what he does. And I sat there, and because I was so concerned about having their approval, that I didn't say a word. And when I got home, Tim picked me up, and I cried all the way in the car until I got home. And I got home, and he knew I needed some time, and he finally said, can you tell me what happened? And I said, yeah. I said, I was so excited. And I said, when they started talking about their husbands and cutting down their husbands, I knew that what I said they were not going to like. And I just wanted to have friends. And I wanted them to like me. And so I never said anything. And I just bawled. And in the middle of the night, God woke me up. He said, let me tell you something. I've called you to be different. I've called you to love and respect your husband. And I've called you to be an example. I'm going to ask you not to worry about their approval, but to do the right thing. And I will bring the friends to you. Now, this is my point. That didn't happen right away. There was a breaking process that God was doing in me to see how much I really needed that approval. Because friends that I needed did not come along until 6 months later. And I can remember the days where I'd be like, God, I don't understand. I'm trying to learn this lesson. And no, he's like, no, you're not learning this lesson. You still are so worried about what people think about you. You still need their approval so bad until you can get to the end of you and not worry about that and understand my approval of you is what you need. And I remember when the breaking was finally over. You know, the Bible says that God will be close to those that are brokenhearted. When he's breaking you, you're normally brokenhearted. And he's close to you if you can see it. And I was amazed at the friends that God brought me. I will never forget the very first friend said, I just want to tell you, I'm just so excited to have friends. And I just want to let you know that I've just been learning so much about loving my husband and about just honoring him. And I went, you're amazing. You're the bomb.com. I didn't even have to bring it up. What is my point in that? I felt like I was being abandoned by God, and I was actually just being broken of the things he did not want in my life. And the need for approval is so hard for most people, especially women. We need this approval. So every time you're alone, he's breaking your dependence on someone besides him. Every time you get a setback, he's breaking that thing in you that has a bad attitude every time it doesn't go your way. Every time you're falsely accused, he's breaking that thing in you that wants to get even. Ever been falsely accused of something? Somebody accused you of something? What's the first thing you want to do? I'm going to get back. You got to be kidding me. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, God will start bringing people in your life because it will start breaking you. And it will start breaking you of that habit and that thought process. Because let me just say this. You and I will never know the power, the grace, the wisdom, the timing, the guidance, the stability, or the faithfulness of God if we don't go through some stuff. And when you're in the middle of that stuff, instead of us constantly going, I don't understand this, God. What am I doing wrong? Maybe you're not. Maybe God is trying to break you of the things that don't look like him. And so I think if we can start understanding that a lot of times God is doing this breaking in us. I just believe this. I believe that breaking moves you. I believe that breaking heals you. I believe that breaking strengthens you, and I believe that breaking guides you. It guides you to the next place that you need to go. And so I'm really wanting us to look at something. So go with me for a second here. I believe that when God starts breaking us of certain things, he also is big on distributing what has now taken place in your life. Whatever God does in you, he never wants you to keep it to yourself. He wants you to distribute it. He wants you to go and share. He wants you to go and do these things. So I want to talk about this first. We all know this story, but I want to read it, okay? In Matthew 14:13-21. Hearing this, Jesus slipped away privately by boat to be alone. But when the crowds discovered he had sailed away, they emerged from all the nearby towns and followed him on foot. So when Jesus landed, he had a huge crowd waiting for him. Seeing so many people, his heart was deeply moved with compassion towards them. So he healed all the sick who were in the crowd. Later that afternoon, the disciples came to Jesus and said, it's going to be dark soon and the people are hungry, but there's nothing to eat here in this desolate place. You should send them to the crowd. You should send the crowds away to the nearby villages to buy themselves some food. You know, you go to a conference and it says, lunch is on you. Go down to Publix and get your own food. They don't need to leave, Jesus said. You can give them something to eat. Can you imagine the disciples? Oh, gotcha. This is a new one. Where in the world do you think you're getting this from? They answered, but all we have are 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Let me have them, Jesus replied. Then he had everyone sit down on the grass, and then he took the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He looked up to heaven, gave thanks to God, and broke the bread into pieces. He then gave it to his disciples, who in turn gave it to the crowds. Everyone ate until they were completely full and satisfied. For the food was multiplied and distributed and broken in front of their eyes. They picked up the leftovers and filled up 12 baskets full of food. What is my point? The reason it was multiplied, not because it was handed in one piece, was because it was broken into pieces, and then Jesus had them distributed to everyone. When God breaks you, he's distributing what's getting ready to happen in his next plan for you. If you're willing to let him distribute it, but you got to be willing to let you think about what happened that day because of the breaking. All he did was break the bread, and over 5,000 people were fed that day. And so I just believe that when we're struggling to understand God's breaking, God's trying to do something through us so he can distribute what he wants to do in you, but you got to be willing to break, and you're not going to understand it. Listen, I went through some things. When I met Tim, anybody that knows I met PT on a blind date, and when we started dating, you talk about not understanding. I didn't understand at all what God was doing. It made no sense to me because I had really committed my walk with God and said, God, whoever this person is you have for me, I'm ready, the whole bit. And I remember that God did a breaking in me for 5 years. Not a month, not 2 months, but 5 years this breaking happened to me. But when I look back at the breaking when I was dating Tim, we dated long distance for 5 years. My depth of my prayer walk, Miss Deb, was the most incredible time that I've ever had in my life. Because he was breaking me because I couldn't ever see what was going to happen with Tim and I. It was a mystery. I had no idea. But God had shown me he was the man for me. And so I thought, good, he's the man for me. Let's just get this going. Let's go to the altar. And that's not what God had. So I look back at the depth of my prayer life that happened during that time. I look back at the time of my study in his word and claiming it all the way to work and all the way back home because he was breaking me. And what I really look back at is the times when I felt so alone, but God was breaking those things in me where I had to have somebody there. I didn't like being alone. And God was breaking that in me, that I needed to get alone and get on my knees and seek him. And I remember doing this. And this was 5 years. Now, let me tell you what he really broke in me. My warped image of me. I didn't like me. And God was breaking that in me before Tim and I ever got married. Because how did he do that? All of a sudden, I'm dating this man who every woman in the world wants. And why wouldn't they? He's absolutely gorgeous. But all these women started coming in from everywhere. Like women were coming from everywhere for Tim Goad. And I'm walking in this low self-esteem, not knowing who I am, none of that. And instead of me thinking, why is God allowing me to go through this? He was breaking that in me so that I did not walk in that low self-esteem. Instead, he was showing me how to walk in his self-image of me and how to walk in a strength and a confidence that I never knew. I remember one day when Tim said to me, I just love a woman that's confident. A confident woman is a beautiful woman. I remember saying, well, then you need to go find her because I'm not her. And God was breaking me. I didn't see it that way, but he was breaking me. And so I believe this, that you're going through, some of you are going through stuff right now you don't understand. It makes no sense to you, but I promise you God's breaking you. And then once you're broken in that, he's going to use that to distribute to go to other people. People are going to start coming in your life that are going to be going through things, and you're going to be like, this is insane that you're coming to me because this is what I'm going through right now. And I believe God's breaking this in me. I was talking to a good friend this week, and it's been very difficult because of the relationship with her family and the relationship with her mom. But I was able to share with her because of what God's showing me here. How about if instead we look at it this way? God's breaking some things in you that you it is so hard for you when you don't have the approval of your mom. And you don't have the things that you think your mom should give you. And instead, God's saying to you, maybe right now is where I need you to lead. And you to love your mom the way you need to be loved by your mom. And so my friend and I were talking, and she was just like, oh my gosh, I believe that's what God's doing with me right now. Because of things in her life, she was desperate for approval. Like it was something she needed because she never got it. And instead of God just saying, I'll just give you approval, God puts a situation in her life where he's showing her, see how desperate you are for this, that you can't even love your mom because you're so daggone upset that you don't have her approval. But you can love her without having her approval if you'll let me break that off of you, whatever that looks like. And so I don't know where you are in this. I don't know where God has you, but I believe this, that which refuses to be broken refuses to be blessed. And I believe that where you are willing to be broken, God wants to bless you. So that which refuses to be broken refuses to be blessed. And what's weird for us is that does not seem how a blessing comes. A blessing, like when I was dating Tim, I remember thinking, you know, I'm serving you, God, like never before. I'm giving you everything. I'm living for you. I'm praying every day. I'm doing all these things. Why is there not a blessing? But do you understand now, I see the blessing from where God was breaking me there? I'm living with the blessing. I'm walking with a man that is so insanely godly, amazing, loving. Everything about him is amazing. I'm walking in the blessing now, but I had to go through the breaking then. A blessing normally doesn't look like the way you want it to look, but you will receive it when you let God break you. And you know, we've talked lately about comfort boxes. If you were at the other girl talk on comfort boxes, and there's so many of us that God's wanting to break those comfort boxes, but we don't like how he's breaking it. And what he's mostly doing is bringing somebody on your path that is breaking you of whatever that is. You know, God's breaking me right now. I'm just going to be gut level honest. I am a retriever. I am someone that just says, okay, I'm going to go isolate. I'm going to go find me a spot, and nobody's going to be able to find me. I learned that growing up. I didn't like dealing with my family. I didn't like dealing with some situations in my home. And so I exited off to my bedroom, and I would spend 5 and 6 hours at a time in my room. Nobody even knew where I was, and I never made a peep, and I just stayed in my room. And I liked it, and I learned that. Well, I'm married, and I have 2 children. And I'm 61, and I'm just now getting this cotton picking thing figured out. That I can't, the minute something happens, Gaye Goad cannot go find her room, because first of all, I share the room with somebody now, and he's going to come find me. But this is the deal. God's breaking me of that, because it's not helping our marriage at all. Because you can't go isolate and go away and think somehow when you come out it's all going to be different. No, nothing changed. You actually made it worse. But why am I sharing this? Because some of you are doing this. And God needs to break you of it. And the way he's going to break you of it is every day you're going to have to face it. And it's going to happen. Tomorrow, I don't mean it wrong, I'm probably going to be put in a situation where the first thing I want to do is go run and hide and not come out. I don't want to come out. And when I come out, I'm like this. Everything's going to be good. I can just tell. Everything feels okay. No, because I didn't fix anything. I didn't change anything. And I've got a husband who wants to talk it out. I'm like, are you a woman? You're like a woman. Why do you want to talk it out? I don't want to talk it out. And he needs to talk it out. God has a sense of humor. He will bring you a mate that's totally opposite of you. And then he's going to break some stuff. Some of you in your marriages right now, you're being broken of some things. But let me tell you, if you have children or going to have children, you want to be broken of it. Because guess what? You are their visual. You are raising future spouses. And I'm realizing that now. I mean, don't wait like I am. Learn it now and understand that if you're going through something, it's possibly more than 100% a breaking that God's doing to get you to the other side of you. You and I have got to get to the other side of us. And the only way God can do it. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I could get some theologians in here, some people in here. I'm going to tell you, that woman is so off base because God never would do anything like that. Let me tell you, I believe God will do whatever he can. If you're in the middle of an ocean drowning, don't you think he'd throw you a life vest? Well, guess what? It may not look like what you think. The life vest may be a breaking to get you to where you basically are drowning. Because then you can rely on him. And you're not relying on the approval of other people. I love all my young girls. I love you. I'm just begging you. Please don't worry about the approval of other people. Don't worry about the approval of other girls. And now we have social media, which just is making everything worse. It's unbelievable to me what I see. Tim and I were somewhere. We were on our trip to Italy. And I'm like, babe, this lady has sat here for an hour. I clocked her. I watched her for an hour trying to get the right selfie to put up. And I'm thinking, who in God's earth is this woman so worried? And what's so sad is she was so beautiful, but she looked like an empty shell. It was insane to me to watch. Literally the only thing I knew to do was pray for her. But this is, again, I'm come back to, if you and I can start understanding that God is doing something in us. He's not mad at us. He's not a mean God. He's none of that. There's just stuff that's got to go. I don't know about you, and especially maybe it's my age. I don't want to miss what God has for me because I'm still over here in this stinking mess and not willing to get it. I think if you and I can start recognizing that he's doing something and it's for our good, you know that good things happen to me. God says he'll use everything. I just did not long ago a talk at church on God's waste management. He wastes absolutely nothing. Nothing. And I know right now some of you probably maybe started thinking of things as you've gone through in your life and it's like, boo, light bulb. God was breaking something in me. He was breaking my pride. I remember when I started cheerleading at 6 years old. And I'm just being honest, there wasn't a lot of things in my life I was good at, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I was a daggone good cheerleader. This was back in the day when you actually cheered. You didn't get thrown in the air, and that's called cheerleading. You actually yelled for the team, and you knew what was going on in the game. Well, my parents took us out of the school we were in, where I was just like this cheerleader. I was it. And then we go to this private Christian school. And I remember that you had to try out. I never had to try out before. And I remember we're up on this blacktop, and where I had been taught to cheer, and this is crazy, but you did your hands a certain way, and you had to do all that, I was good. I knew what I was doing. I remember I got up there and just so confident that everybody was going to be blown away by, who's this cheerleader that came in, And when it was all over, the lady walks up to me and she said, well, honey, I want to let you know you did a good job, but I don't know, some of the moves that you did and stuff, you're really just too stiff, and I just don't think you're what we're looking for. I was mortified. Like, oh no, I'm what you're looking for. There's been a mistake here. What in the world? When I look now, God was breaking the pride in me that thought I was something else. That thought no matter, I didn't even think, I didn't even learn to cheer before I went. Because I thought, I got this. But God was breaking pride in me in those areas. You're probably going to look back and go where God is going, please don't be so prideful here. Because I'm breaking you in this. When you go back to the Bible and you think about Mary, who saw Jesus coming, and when she went and got the alabaster jar. And the only way that this expensive perfume, this expensive blessing could come out was for her to break the jar. Now this is the deal. Because she broke it, everything in it had to be used because she couldn't put any of it back in the jar because it had been broken. God will use everything he breaks to the full extent. He will break everything and use every drop because he doesn't want to put it back in. He's already taken it out. And I don't even know what that looks like. I'm looking at my life right now and I am seeing where I'm so grateful that God loved me enough to break me and love me enough. The fact that I have a microphone in my hand and even talking to you guys, God broke me like you have no idea. Because let me explain something to you. Some of you are this way. I'm too quiet. I'm too shy. God, I'm not a person to get up and talk. Oh, beware, and don't even say it around PT, or just let me tell you, you're in trouble. God had to break that in me because that was something I put on myself. Your thoughts, ladies, be careful of your thoughts. Because God will start breaking you of those thoughts, and that is not fun. That's painful. So get them out now. Get all those things that you think about. I mean, I just believe that God is a God of overflow. If you think about it, when Jesus prayed over the baskets, he could have stopped when the last person was fed, but he continued, and there were 12 baskets left over. He's a God of overflow. But the only way he got the overflow was to first break the bread. And once we get the bread broken, the blessing comes. So I started looking at all the things that God has done. I started looking at all the ways that he has broken me. And so I just want to write these things down for us, and then we're going to ask some questions. What do we do now that we realize God's breaking us? What is it we do? Number one, we recognize that we haven't been abandoned. We're just being broken and reshaped. If you can recognize that God has not left you, he's actually doing something in you to reshape you. The second thing is we need to ask God to show us what we need to learn. If I would have known back in my life when God was breaking me the most, if I would have said, God, what is it I need to learn? The breaking would have been a whole heck of a lot easier. But I fought him during the whole breaking. Ask God what I need to learn. The next one is we thank him for the breaking. Praise sets the atmosphere for victory and understanding. If you and I can start thanking him while he's breaking us, then we'll start getting a clear understanding of what he's doing. And the last one is this. We need to become aware of the next breaking and embrace it and welcome it. Whatever that next breaking is. I mean, can I just ask you guys a question? While we're talking about this, in your mind, are you thinking of things and where you realize now that God was breaking you? And it didn't seem like it, and it wasn't fun, but now you're going, oh my word, he was breaking me. He was breaking the things in me that I needed to be broke. Because remember this, to be whole means to be broken, and to be broken means to become whole. So every time you're yelled at, every time you're mocked, every time you're misunderstood, every time you're left empty, every time somebody's jealous of you and says things about you, every time you're falsely accused, every time, God is going to bring a blessing if you'll understand he's breaking you. So this is the questions I have. When in your life has God done a breaking, or where do you see one needs to happen now? Where in your life, or when in your life, has God done a breaking, or where do you see that one needs to happen now? And the next one is, how is he using that breaking in you now? If you realize that God has you in a breaking, how do you think he's using it? What is he trying to show you?